All right, we're going to move right into Odessa's presentation, and she's going to
Okay.
talk about a student group assignment for intimate engagement with actors of the Global South and region issue-specific critical analysis.
It's a long one. So you can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So I'm Odessa. I'm at the School of Social Work at the University of Michigan. I'm also affiliated with the Detroit School of Urban Studies and Center for Southeast Asian Studies. My research is around refugee resettlement and refugee-led organizations, but my classes are in immigration and global social work. And so just to give you a little context, and I talked about this a little bit with a group yesterday, a breakout group. So the School of Social Work, we had a kind of revamping of the overall curriculum a couple of years ago. And so we took this opportunity to initiate a global social work pathway. So it's led by 4 faculty members out of 50 plus. So it's a small group. And it's one of 7 pathways. And 4 are what I call micro level. As many of you are probably familiar with, social work is an applied field, professional field. So it's mostly micro level practice. And 3 are macro level. There's policy, community practice, and global social work. However, a large chunk of the students are in the micro level. And so we piloted it in just last fall during COVID. It was all online. It was kind of a mess. I mean, logistically, but so we had our first cohort. There are 2 required courses, and what we'll be talking about today is the one of the 2 required courses, the framing course. It's called Power in a Global Context. And so I just wanted to show you also this quick note about some overlaps between social work and international development. It's actually it was authored by someone at IU in social work. So on the left here are competencies in social work and skills in humanitarian assistance on the other side. So there's some parallels. And so this is the course. I think I'll have to also talk a little bit fast. Half of the semester is framing, which I'll talk about, and half is on localizing or application, which is the group assignments, and the last day is on radical imagining. But the focus today is really the group assignments. But first I'll talk about the framing because it applies to the group assignments. So this is the framing. It happens 6 sessions. It's critical theory, critical epistemology, and we have 4 frameworks. And this is done through, lectures, jigsaws that Phyllis was talking about yesterday. And we also have some guest speakers. And here are the 4 frameworks. And so in social work, I guess my approach is kind of mid-level theory rather than the grand development theories that the last speakers, Rachel, talked about. So these are kind of mid-level, well, except in post-development framework by Pink. So Evan might be familiar. So she co-authored this book. And so we cover that in one session, and we do the jigsaw where different students read each chapter, like Phyllis was mentioned yesterday. And then we talk about the indigenous theory of change, African-centered evaluation framework, because social workers do a lot of evaluation and assessments in the field, actually, but not African-centered, usually. And then the human rights-based development framework. So these 4, 1 session each, and then the students will pick at least one to apply for their assigned case study. So that happens in the first half of the semester. It's kind of just learning about the frameworks and the theories. But an important thing too is, aligned with our conversations about challenging traditional, conventional frameworks. So these discussions are always in conversation with, traditional social work frameworks like biopsychosocial, person at PEI, cultural competence, what's missing in these, how can these other frameworks inform how we usually do social work. And then we have spring break, whatever, and then we have the application. So 3 to 4 students per group. They self-select based on their interests, so they're assigned to a specific org or project in a specific region on a specific issue. And I'll talk all about those in more detail. Next slide. And also deliverables are presentation, reflection, paper, interview, which I'll also talk about. So this is basically the kind of grid. So this is session 1 is 1 student group. And so, 6 groups. And they do a presentation for each class week. So the issue, the aim here is to kind of get a diversity so that the students will like learn about or hear about different issues, but at the same time have a chance to focus deeply into one. And they would have spent the whole first half of the semester preparing for their presentation. And so these are the different topics, and they can choose based on their interests. And these are the different organizations or projects. And my aim here was to kind of have a diversity in the kind of organizations so that each week we cover a different kind of organization. Right? So the first one is the organizers from Tunisia and Italy. Very grassroots, very small, unfunded, and they do a lot of work in the Mediterranean Sea and legal advocacy for missing migrants. BROC, which is a leading INGO in Bangladesh, so that they can learn about the big institutions. And then storytelling, photojournalism with indigenous groups in the Amazon by a journalist. Participatory budgeting project in Brazil, Sao Paulo. And then a United Nations coalition. So this is the one project or organization that was kind of historical by Professor Yoshihama, who was very involved in that. And then this is global social work, but the truth is that probably the majority of them will end up working in the US, right? So this one here is a refugee-led grassroots org in Michigan. And these are, most of them I have connections with, and I set this up before the class, but a couple of them, it was kind of a cold calling where, I looked it up and thought they were interesting and set up the participation for the class. And same with the regions and diversity across different regions of the world. And then one is transnational, because the Vienna Tribunal was global. And so that's kind of the groups and deliverables. So they have a paper, they will write about what they researched. And we have some kind of topics, but I work with them to focus on specific questions or essays they're most interested in. It's due at the end. They have a reflection on the group process where it's an essay and it's pass fail, and they reflect if there's red flags about the group process, what they learned. And they also have a group contract in the beginning amongst themselves. And then they have a 1.5 hour presentation to the class. And so they're required to have a class discussion of some sort, to engage classmates. And they also are to have some kind of class activity where I encourage creativity or, something fun or new. And then a detailed resource page where they put their references, links, anything to share with their classmates. And I think that the key part of it is the 1 hour interview with someone from the org or project. So the 3 to 4 students are to set up a 1 hour interview to Q&A, to talk to this person, and they prepare their interview questions. And then it's recorded on Zoom, and then it's assigned to the rest of the class for viewing as asynchronous material, because this class was fully online last fall. Oh wait, last winter. So yeah, and then so I set up, I told the people from the representatives that the students will email them sometime in the semester to set this up, and the $50 kind of honorarium for their time. And that's kind of allows, so usually, we have guest speakers, but the intent here was a kind of a more intimate engagement. So it's one-on-one, and they can really kind of have Q&A and engage with them rather than a bigger group. But at the same time, the rest of the class will be able to watch it. And then they can talk about it and process the interview during their presentation. Content is some background. They get some statistics to get a context of the issue in the region, but also globally to have some perspective. And, basic information, what the org does, its history. And then, of course, there's the interview and then the critical analysis. So the orgs or projects are not meant to be, I'm sorry, was that time?
No, sorry, that was someone entering the room. You've got a few more minutes still.
Okay. So the orgs are not meant to be models, right? So they're encouraged to critically analyze the organization, the challenges they're doing against the histories and social, economic, political factors in the region, and include, other actors that are impacting that organization, and dynamics of power and inequity as well. And we are to apply at least one framework from the earlier class, the 4, to examine, and most of them did more than one. They did 2 or 3. Okay, this is the last. Yeah, so this is the last slide. Not sure if it's, so the next steps are like Ken's presentation. We're hoping to have some transnational courses, and also we're working on getting some, developing sustainable global partnerships for reciprocal courses or projects. It's still in the process of, we're still working on that. And also to incorporate critical global lens in all courses, including what we call essentials and social work. And so I think we also talked a little bit about it in the breakout room yesterday, but we kind of see the global social work pathway itself as means towards decolonizing social work education. And it was quite strategic, because this here about incorporating a critical global lens in all courses, we could have done 2 years ago with a new curriculum, but the senior faculty, and they were thinking that it would be more strategic to kind of start with a pathway rather than, do this overhaul for the whole school that we did. I guess think it was quite ready maybe for, this critical lens for the whole curriculum. And so starting here and then building it over the years. And this last paradigmatic community practice framework here on the bottom right is the traditional practice or teaching. And then there's the collaborative. And I think that social work is probably at the bottom too. But leading towards a more different structural transformative community practice. But I guess it's perhaps like a jump to go from the traditional to the radical. And so it's, so that's kind of how we view the courses and the pathway. And that's it, thank you. And if you have any questions, or not sure about the time.
That was perfect timing. We are
Okay.
right on time for a break.
To what extent do you engage with the UN SDGs? It's part of one of in the frameworks, and it's discussed as part of the different institutions that are that the different organizations work with.